Welcome to my hybrid stone army build. I take your typical meta landslide build and customize it to something unique, strong and fun that you can achieve very early in the game, yet is still effective well into tiers 3 and tier 4. Here you can see I'm tussling with enemies 12 levels above me. So I'll show you two different versions. The nice and simple early game build first. Then after that, I'll give you my unique spin, the more advanced higher tier version using legendary and unique items. So let's jump right into the meat of this beef stick and talk about early game. So most people use the poison creeper skill into pulverize. You trap them, then smash them. Yeah, great, cool, this works. But Poison Creeper synergizes even better with the Landslide skill. On Landslide, you can stack up these terror motes, granting you guaranteed critical strikes for every stunned and immobilized enemy. Well, it just so happens that Poison Creeper can immobilize dozens of enemies at once. These add to the Landslide terror motes, granting a huge number of critical strikes to use. The Pulverize skill also stuns enemies with its overpower. So using both Poison Creeper and Pulverize, you can see how easily I'm stacking up these terror motes, these guaranteed critical strikes. So now I have a near unlimited amount of crits that I can just spam away and dish out insane damage. Even a difficult boss can be killed in seconds with this strategy. Now real quick, one of the very first aspects you want on this build is of course this landslide aspect. Essentially doubling your landslides per use, saving you a ton of spirit resource. You can use the claw attack, it's fast and inflicts poison, but I do believe that in the early game, that Storm Strike is a great choice. Not only does it give you decent damage reduction, but it also makes enemies vulnerable. 50% chance of vulnerability is very high. You can combine the Storm Strike basic skill with the Hurricane skill. That will also decrease enemy damage dealt even more, so you now have a ton of damage reduction going on. Hurricane will slow down enemies too, giving you crowd control. You're gonna want at least one defensive skill for sure. I like Blood Howl. Self-healing has saved my ass many times, plus you get increased attack speed, which is useful here because you'll be swinging your Storm Strike around as much as possible, mainly to generate spirit and inflict vulnerability. Now this version is my Bearstone Army build. Basically the same setup as before, except we get rid of Hurricane and use our wolves. There's two important legendary aspects here. First, the Stampede, granting a third wolf and an extra Poison Creeper following you around. The second is the Shepherd's aspect, which increases our core skill damage for every companion. Now there's a few more reasons why I'm messing around with the wolves, which I will explain. So firstly, even though the wolves don't deal crazy damage, they don't have utility or any special abilities, the fact that they are just there and distracting your enemies is a huge help. I like to fight way over my own level, and the wolves taking aggro from the enemies can make a big difference. You really notice this after using the wolves for a while, then switching them out for a different skill. You suddenly feel very lonely by yourself. Another example is this one spirit boon in particular. Critical attacks have a 20% chance to reset companion cooldown. Yeah boy, so because we are constantly doing guaranteed crits, this will activate often. Feels great using your Poison Creeper to trap everyone, and 3 seconds later you can do it again. This spirit boon is essential to this build. The most important aspects are the Aftershock aspect that doubles Landslide, and the Stampede that adds an additional companion. Then some other aspects you really should be using are the Shepherd's aspect, the Crash Stone aspect that increases Earth-type critical strike damage by up to 60% on crowd control enemies. This is big boy damage. A similar aspect is this one that increases Earth crit damage after using a Storm skill, then increasing Storm-type critical chance after using an Earth skill. So if and only if you are using Storm Strike as your basic skill, then this aspect is actually insanely useful. So look out for Earth type buffs or critical strike buffs like these. I strongly recommend at least one of these two Pulverize aspects. The first one, Pulverize, creates a shockwave that travels forward, but the second aspect here will change it into an Earth type skill, creating Earth spikes, dealing damage focused on one spot. This will allow you to receive the benefits of any Earth type buffs and synergize that with your land skill. But if you have both, you can indeed use both at the same time. The buffs you want to look for on your gear is critical strike damage, crowd control damage, and most importantly, vulnerable damage. Damage to vulnerable enemies will give you the best multiplier. You may not find this gear until the later levels, but if you do, these two items take this build to the next level, baby. All Earth skills are now bear skills, and then your true form is a bear, increasing all bear skills by +2. So when combining them, this means that Earth skills are increased by +2 as well. So debilitating roar, pulverize, and landslide are now increased. This makes a big difference. And there's a good reason for being a hybrid and shapeshift into different forms. It's so I can take advantage of effects such as these. When using a shapeshifting skill that changes your form, gain up to 200 life or fortify. Also this ability here, Clarity, gains 6 spirit when transforming back into a human. And of course, these effects down here, like quick shift and heightened sense, giving increased damage and damage reduction. Because you gotta understand that with this setup, in a fight I am constantly switching back and forth from human to bear. This works to my advantage. I may do a full video on the tier 4 endgame version of this build, using these two unique bear items. But for now, if you don't have these two unique items, don't worry about it. You don't need them to make this build work. Moving on to the skill tree, Storm Strike is a fantastic basic skill. The vulnerability it easily inflicts is very helpful. Plus, this is essential to our build being a hybrid shapeshifter and activating those shapeshifting effects. Throughout the build, we will be leveling up effects that help our spirit generation, because you can clap the cheeks off anyone in your way with this build, but you simply need enough spirit to do it. So we'll be using effects like these two here, Heart of the Wild and Abundance. Then we got Pulverize with its overpower stun, and Landslide with its Timecodes. Moving into the defense skills, you can use Earthen Bulwark or Debilitating Roar. Personally, I prefer Debilitating Roar for the self-healing, but you can use either one, whichever you prefer. Once you get to the companions and able to level up your creeper, now you can finally start stacking up your Landslide's Timecodes and get that baby bumping. In the early game, you can use Hurricane. It's a good skill for crowd control and damage reduction. But as you progress and you get the aspect to gain an extra companion, that's when you get rid of Hurricane for the Wolves. Wolves deal extra damage to CC and poisoned enemies. Also, critical strikes increase their attack speed, so the Wolves pair up nicely with this setup. And now you're going to want to start upgrading your other passive effects. Neurotoxin should be the first you get. This is very important. You just need at least one tier of it, simply just to activate it. Because as long as this is activated, then that means any poisoned enemy will now get crowd control bonus damage. Very helpful. Also, Venom, of course, will be a big help too. And like I said before, these shapeshifting skills will be effective. Clarity, quick shift, and heightened sense. Now some other stuff like Defiance, Natural Disaster are good for bumping up your damage. And finally, Earth and Might. Remember to comment down below with your thoughts and opinions on this build and of your own builds. Thank you for watching my fellow jabronis. I'll talk to you later.